Okay, good morning and welcome to our sixth installment of Hashtag Help in Sin Law Live. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll go over a couple of housekeeping items. Please sign into the chat box if you haven't done so already. Please mute yourself if you're not speaking, and enter any questions into the chat box, and we'll have a section for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. And then the link for this session's uploaded video will be on the Hashtag Help in Sin Law YouTube channel, and we'll send that link out after the session's complete. And of course, remember that our Hashtag Help in Sin Law YouTube channel is a one-stop shop for resources throughout our region, so check it out. So this morning, we'd like to welcome Maegan Autremont as our presenter. She is the Child Trafficking Coordinator, Forensic Interviewer Specialist with the Children's Advocacy Network. She has a bachelor's degree in sociology with a concentration in family and child studies from McNeese State University. She's worked in the child abuse field for over 5 years and has conducted over 900 forensic interviews with children regarding abuse. Maegan works alongside multidisciplinary team members that include local law enforcement, the district attorney's office, child protective services, local courts, and FINS offices. She's also a licensed facilitator for Not a Number Love 146 curriculum in the Rapides Parish School System. Maegan's also currently part of the creation of a local human trafficking task force. So Maegan, we're really pleased that you could join us this morning, and we're excited to get this information that you're going to share with us. So at this time, I'm going to stop sharing and you can start sharing your screen.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know how I got it in the buggy, but I knew I wasn't going to get it in the car.
There we go. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm having a little, okay, here we go. Share. All right, did it work?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Well, guys, thank you for having me again. My name is Maegan Autremont. I work for the Children's Advocacy Network here in Alexandria, Louisiana. I'm so happy to be here to just continue to raise awareness and teach people and get them to try to understand what's happening in our community, what's happening in our state, in our country, what's happening locally. So I'm going to begin just a little bit of understanding of what human trafficking is and what we do here at the CAC, I call it, or the CAN. So under our network, it's just an umbrella of resources and services, and we're all kind of divided up in our own little programs. So I'm going to kind of give you a snippet and summary of each program before we get started. So we have CASA, that stands for Court-Appointed Special Advocates. These are advocates and coordinators that supervise, trained volunteers in the community who interact with children while they're in foster care. These children that are in foster care, a lot of times they can be misunderstood or not really spoken for because of the turnover for foster care in the state system. Unfortunately, is very busy, and unfortunately, we have to place too many kids. But if that child is in foster care, they do have a CASA, and that CASA is just the voice for that child throughout the whole court process. That is just a constant person that we can offer them in their life so that they can have their opinions matter, what their wants and needs for, and it's just for an advocate to speak throughout, the process that no kid should ever have to experience, but unfortunately they do. Our therapy program is a trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, TFCBT, you might hear. We have an in-house therapist who specializes in this therapy type and provides pro bono services through the kids that we do recover here at the CAC, at the Child Advocacy Center. The CAC is where I am housed. The trafficking program or SAME program, Family Advocates, Forensic Interviewers, our MDT coordinator, we are all housed under one roof. The CAC stands for the Children's Advocacy Center. We're designed to be a one-stop shop program so that children and families can come here despite of their circumstances that have experienced some type of trauma or abuse, ranging from physical, sexual, neglect, witness to violence. And now that we're seeing human trafficking, unfortunately, kids are coming here to tell their stories to the forensic interviewers and to get services in the community. So we do send out referrals. We do case management for kids. Sometimes if a child discloses sexual abuse that is current within the forensic interview process at the CAC, we do have an in-house SAME nurse that can conduct our or rape kits and offer any type of medical services to our children. SANE also stands for Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner, and we do have Miss Amy here that contracts with us part-time. So we're very happy to have all of these people that work under one roof. We work alongside of our DA's office, our local juvenile justice systems, OJJ, FIN's office, and we provide support to families through the court process if their case does make it there. So in the end, RCAC tries to minimize abuse and minimize trauma to abuse of what they experienced, and it's just designed for them to tell their story one time and try to guide them through the whole process of healing. So now I want to talk about what my program actually does. So you heard me talk about how human trafficking is on a rise over here in our community, in our country, in our state. But I want to tell you what I do. So as a child trafficking coordinator, by the way, we do not traffic kids. We are anti-trafficking. I don't know why my title says that. So please do not know that we traffic kids. We try to solve the problem. But as a coordinator, we try to educate, train, and coordinate services. We try to educate our agency as a whole, our MDT members, that's our local law enforcement. Those are our officers on the street, our detectives that are working the cases, our school systems. We have implemented 1146. You'll hear me talk about that later on in the presentation about preventative measures to avoid abuse and trafficking, exploitive situations within school systems and our community, like I'm doing right now. So basically, it's just to always raise awareness, always try to inform people about the numbers rising and what we can do about it and how to identify the problem. Like I said, training law enforcement, our local CPS, Department of Child and Family Services, our juvenile justice systems, our courts, our community, our prosecution. The case actually gets there. And then we coordinate services. So not only do we just educate and train, but it's like if you educate and train, well, what are you actually doing with the problem or when the kids that you do see? So a lot of times we work with DCFS and placement options. We know that placement options for foster kids are already not enough, but there's already a lacking with specialized therapeutic foster homes and homes for our trafficking victims. We do send referrals out of state for kids that are being trafficked. We do set them up with specialized therapy. We do work with the families to kind of like coordinate service providers and just making sure that their needs are being met in every avenue. Because again, human trafficking is a different form of trauma. It's a more specialized and specialized trauma that kind of hits deeper. They have triggers that no one else has ever seen. So it does take a special person to be able to guide them through the process of that and working with families to let them know what kind of behaviors to expect, how to manage that. We coordinate respite care with kids and just try to move them on to just be thriving citizens and try to maybe not give them that childhood back, but hopefully be thriving citizens in the community again. So here's a bit of a trigger warning. A lot of people have experienced trauma in different forms. What I'm going to talk about, I might say some verbiage that is not very polite, but it is relevant to my presentation to talk about human trafficking and for you to gain a better understanding of what it truly is. I'm going to talk about violence and other potentially upsetting content and material. So pay attention to your body and your feelings and your emotions. Anytime you need I would say walk out or go to the bathroom and drink some water, but half of you are in your car on your desk and it's virtual. So feel free to click out of here or click back and forth, turn your screen off, or just maybe take your headphones out your ears if I'm saying anything that might trigger you or alarm you in a way. So here it is. So what is human trafficking? I want to talk about the common misconceptions before I get to the formal definition. So some common misconceptions is, it only happens out of country or third world countries. It doesn't happen in America. You have to be physically forced and moved in a white van with a creepy man across state lines. The Super Bowl is the biggest trafficking event ever. Only women and girls can be victims of trafficking. And labor trafficking, that doesn't happen here, and it's less traumatic than sex trafficked. and traffickers target victims they do not know. And if the trafficked person consented to be in their initial situation, then it cannot be human trafficking or against their will because they knew better. They knew what they were doing. So, by the way, all of these are false misconceptions. So flipping the script, not only women and children can be victims of trafficking, it actually happens to a lot of males. Current to this day, the numbers will show that, of course, females are more likely to be trafficked than males, but it's underreported because of the guilt and the shame and the failure to disclose if you're a male and being trafficked or even just experiencing sexual abuse in general. So if ever we can get past that stigma in a couple of years and identify more males being trafficked, I know that's going to happen. It's just underreported right now. So here are my legal definitions. The types of trafficking: there is sex and there's labor trafficking. Sex trafficking is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, obtaining, patronizing, or soliciting of a person for the purposes of a commercial sex act. In which the commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, or coercion, in which the person is induced to perform such an act and has not attained the 18 years of age. So that's a lot of words. I want to simplify it for you. So basically, sex trafficking, it involves force, fraud, or coercion to obtain some type of labor or commercial sex act. And a lot of you might be thinking, well, what is a commercial sex act? So a commercial sex act is any sex act on account of anything of value given or received by any person. So if you think about it, what is of value to you? It could be money, right? It could be drugs if you're addicted to anything. It can be a child that is lacking basic needs. It could be a sweatshirt because they're cold and they're homeless. It can be an ice cream cone because that is something of value. It's still something of value to me, but in a child's eyes, anything can be of value. So if any sex act on account is given or received by any person in exchange for something of value, it can be as little as an ice cream cone. And I want you guys to remember that because when kids are being trafficked, a lot of people are like, well, they put themselves in that situation, or that situation is very minute, as they're minimizing the trauma because of what's happened to them, because it was just an ice cream cone, or it was just a sweatshirt, or it was just a couch to sleep on that night. But what really happened was that kid was homeless and they were couch surfing, but they needed a roof over their head. But in exchange for sleeping on that couch to have some safety that night, that person or that perpetrator may have molested that child in exchange for them sleeping on their couch. They don't have money, but they do have their body to give. And while sex trafficking is so valuable, it's because if you sell a material item or a piece of clothing to make money, that material item is gone. It's a one and done thing, but your body, unfortunately, with sex trafficking, it's reusable over and over. So it has a lot of value to it, and perpetrators make a lot of money off of that. And labor trafficking is, labor trafficking refers to recruitment, harboring, transportation of a person for obtaining labor or services through force, fraud, or coercion, involuntary servitude. So a lot of people think that labor trafficking only happens, again, like the kind of the picture I have of people in the agriculture, but a lot of people don't think of Louisiana, which I don't know why. I live in a bunch of cane fields and soybean fields, and we like crawfish during crawfish season. How about the people that are picking the soybeans, that are on the tractors day and night? Now, yes, we do have farmers. Not every person that has a big farmland and that is harvesting food is a labor trafficking, but it does happen. People get coerced into coming into America, such as Mexico or Colombia or anything like that, and they're promised a good life. They're promised normal hours with good pay, enough to be able to survive and have room and board and food. But what happens is their passports get taken away from them, or their visas or anything like that, and they're working 20-hour days, and they're not getting paid enough to keep up with the rent and the food. So it's just this endless cycle of debt that they cannot ever get out of. So it's just that feeling of debt bondage and never being able to get out. Some of our kids, they're being coerced through online commercial ads while they're on these gaming apps, and they're seeing like magazine sales crew where, oh, you want to make money online. They're promised false promises about, you don't have to work long hours, but it ends up they're being a slave through online. They're always having to be on their phone and can never have time to themselves. Or they're promised to go somewhere else and they're taken, somewhere else. So how do perpetrators have the means of control? How do they get people in these types of situations? It's called the means of control. It's force, fraud, and coercion. Force is such as kidnapping, physical violence, drugging their victims, threats with a weapon, denial of medical care. You can think of ways that all of these scenarios can play out. Like I said, human trafficking doesn't always have to be forceful. It can be a mind game. It could be psychological coercion, but it also can mean, yes, you can be physically kidnapped and taken across state lines. Yes, that is trafficking, but you could also be trafficked through your phone and you never have to move. They can instill physical violence. They inflict bruises or broken bones or lacerations on a child or an adult to make them stay. Threaten them with a weapon or a gun to their head, or denial of medical care, especially for labor trafficking victims. If they're working long hours and they're not getting their medical needs met, they could deny them medical care and make them work longer. So it's any type of threat or violence. Fraud, such as labor trafficking, I talked about magazine sales crews. That's false or deceptive work offers through online ads, promises of employment, marriage, or a better life coming to America, such as that endless cycle of debt bondage. They're working long hours and little pay, and they can't keep up with the room and board, so they just end up, never being able to leave or get out or go back home. Coercion, I talked about that psychological manipulation, threats of violence, control of children, photographing online situations, withholding travel documents, intimidation tactics. And a lot of our kids experience the coercion. Think about it this way. If you have a child that sends a explicit picture of themselves through online, and they think it's just a one and done thing, but yet that perpetrator comes back three months later, 3 years later, saying, hey, I need you to do this to me. I need you to give me another picture of yourself. And you're like, well, no, that happened long ago. You already got one. Well, I have this picture of you 3 years ago or 3 months ago. And if you don't send me another picture, I'm going to threaten to out you. I'm going to out you to your parents. I'm going to send this picture all over school, all over Facebook, whatever. And that's just a form of coercion to be able to manipulate them into sending more stuff, or it's blackmail. So we're talking about the traffickers. I put these sweet little pictures up of the stereotypical, what is a trafficker and what does it look like? Hollywood wants you to, by a lack of knowledge, they want you to see these men as perpetrators. Not one of them is a woman, because women can be perpetrators too. They can be traffickers, they can be recruiters for kids, and it can actually not be a stranger, right? We tell kids about stranger danger. They could be a trafficker, they could be a bad person, but really the trafficker or the perpetrator is actually within the home, and it's actually someone your child has been exposed to and knows, either through school, coaching, church, youth groups, whatever, or online relationships. But Hollywood does show the pretty handsome white collar white man, older white man with money. Maybe he's a CEO of a bank. It can be the dad that looks like he's on a business trip, or it can be the rapper with the pimp cup and all the chains, right? All these people can be traffickers, but trafficking does not discriminate within being a perpetrator or within being a victim. So what does it look like in our community? Any individual selling a child in their home, neighborhood, hotel, etc., in exchange for anything of value, money, drugs, a place to stay. A child engaging in a sex act of anything of value, we talked about that. Talked about that kid that is homeless and he needed a place to stay. It's called couch surfing. That's survival trafficking. I'm kind of going to be a little explicit here. We've had kids that needed a ride, right? Maybe a ride to New Orleans or maybe a ride from New Orleans and back home. They don't have any money, but the guy or the woman that picks them up, well, you can perform oral sex on me and I'll give you a ride. That is survival trafficking. That is human trafficking. And that child is just trying to survive. And unfortunately, you know, your survival instincts, you know, kick in and people say you got to do what you got to do, but they are being harmed and they are being victimized. Even if that child or that adult says, well, I was in control, I consented to this, that's all I had, but they're still a victim. And we try to get kids and even adults to just realize that they're being harmed. We have familial trafficking. Familial trafficking, obviously familia, that is your family. So at the beginning of 2017, 2019, the first couple of years that we really started seeing this was familial in the trafficking aspect of, especially in Alexandria in the rural areas. I know Ms. Donna on here, substance abuse is a big issue. The opioid epidemic is a huge issue. People that during the recession are having a hard time, you know, feeding their children, a hard time keeping the lights on or having their water bills paid. Unfortunately, they are turning the other way and having an aunt or an uncle, you know, living at the house. Well, I'll pay your bills, but if you don't say anything because I'm touching your kid, or I'm getting your kid to perform oral sex for me in exchange for keeping your bills paid. And unfortunately, the parents let that happen because they feel that they have no other choice. Children are being exploited through pornographic images and online exploitation. For those of you who have kids or teenagers, I'm so thankful with my two little boys. They are babies right now. I don't have to worry about this, but kids are soliciting themselves through Snapchat, social media accounts, and sometimes they don't even know that they're being exploited. Sometimes kids have those misconceptions, such as I spoke earlier about you physically having to leave your house or be in a car being transported somewhere to be trafficked and sold. Like I said, that is not happening now. It's happening easier through online. Kids are taking nude photos of themselves to impress maybe a significant other, and that they are thinking that significant other is good intended, but is actually selling their underage pictures to relative perpetrators, such as pedophiles or anything like that, and they're being exploited online, and they can never get that picture back. The intersection of sex trafficking, labor trafficking, or forced labor, agriculture, such as here in Louisiana, about factories, plants, massage parlors. We really are not seeing that over here in Alexandria or in Region 6, but you do hear about that in bigger cities, how they'll have raids and they're shutting down massage parlors because they're a sex trafficking ring. But I think state police would be more, could talk more about the massage parlor. So here's just a little graph about, you know, the scope of the problem. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the numbers. So it shows from 2019 to 2021. I don't have 2022 because we're still in it right now. You'll see the orange and then the blue. The blue shows how many kids were confirmed trafficking, and the orange will show how many kids were high risk. And what does that mean? So confirmed would be they have made a disclosure through the CAC of being trafficked through Department of Child and Family Services and us. We do have a checklist if they are disclosing some sort of transaction of goods in exchange for a sexual favor. And then high risk, these are the kids that are more susceptible, that are saying that they're running away, they have substance abuse issues, they have a passive sexual assault. All of these factors, or if they're in foster care or if they're homeless, these are all vulnerabilities and risk factors to be trafficked. So we do try to keep a watch on those kids too and monitor what they're doing. So in 2019, a total of 42 kids were served in between confirmed and high risk. 17 were confirmed and 25 of them were high risk. In 2020, we had 29 as a whole total, and then we had 8 confirmed and 21 high risk kids. In 2020, I'm sorry, in 2021, we had 41 total and 8 were confirmed and 33 were high risk. So what we keep saying is the total kind of keeps going up. And that's a good thing and a bad thing, I would say. The good part is because people are making reports. The kids in the school systems are making reports when we do go talk to them about prevention. And unfortunately, they're realizing like, oh my gosh, you know, this has happened to me. This is a problem. This is not normal behavior in my family because other kids and other parents don't do this. So we're able to bring those kids in and just, you know, try to get them as much help as needed. So the good thing is we're raising awareness, and hopefully, you know, down the road, if we climb upriver far enough, we can try to prevent this from happening just by raising awareness to the little ones. And right here, this kind of shows the difference of child trafficking and the gender of them. What you see is the majority of our victims of trafficking and high risk is 90% are still female, and there are 10% that are male. We are seeing more males, you know, being trafficked, but like I said, it's just that barrier of disclosure, the shame, the guilt. They're kind of getting stumped, but hopefully whenever we send them to therapy or whatever, they might have more disclosures. And again, most of our kids are 29% of them are confirmed trafficked, and then 71% of them are still high risk. So our CAC is not seeing a significant amount of sex trafficking victims that are confirmed, but they're all very on the verge of being high risk and to be trafficked. So we're trying to put in a lot of preventative measures to keep them from going down that road. So you heard me talk about the characteristics and the vulnerabilities of these kids. I want to say that whenever I go into schools and talk to these kids, I don't want to be like, y'all all have vulnerabilities, you know, like it's a negative thing or it's a bad thing. But I want to acknowledge that, you know, vulnerabilities are a real thing, and how we can, you know, support our vulnerabilities and, you know, make it our own and not let perpetrators, bad people, what I say is to take advantage and exploit those vulnerabilities, because everybody has vulnerabilities, you, me, everybody in this room. But the more vulnerability factors a child has, obviously the more susceptible they are for a person to take advantage of them, such as trafficking. So, you know, quick look from 2019 to 2021, we did see about 62% of them had lack of social support. 49% had substance abuse issues. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, people, but these kids that we're seeing, they're not just doing marijuana. We're seeing 14 to 16, they're doing, I mean, I know y'all heard of the fentanyl stuff. I know there's a lot of cocaine usage and just honestly a lot of crystal meth and heroin. But unfortunately, that is what we're seeing. So I don't want to sugarcoat anything with these kids. 43% of them have runaway behavior, and then 46% of them are truant. So we work alongside with Finn's office in the court, and if you do usually have one kid, they are always experiencing lack of social support because they're in foster care and they're on the run. So on the run means they're not in school, and they usually turn to substance abuse for their support. So right here, the CAC traffic child demographics shows the type of trafficking, which was familial, sex, or labor, and then your how they were victimized, were they during their homeless period with a bio family member and were in foster care, and then their known substance usage, runaway behavior, and truancy behavior. I don't want to run out of time, so I'm going to kind of skip over this. And I do want to concentrate on the psychological coercion part of how a trafficker designs of how to manipulate children and an adult. So this was an American psychologist. His name was Maslow, and this is his theory of hierarchy of the grooming process. So this is a human motivation scale. Everybody on this earth needs 5 things. They have their physiological needs, which is your air, food, water, your basic needs of shelter and clothing to survive, right? Those are your survival needs, your instincts. And then you have your safety and security level. Everybody wants personal and financial security, stable, social stability, property, health. And then if you get past that, you want your relationships, your friendships, your romantic relationships, your love and belonging to someone, your sense of connection to family. If you think about it in the bigger cities or with trying to relate it to you, such as maybe gangs and how those actually form or start out, is if a person or a child is homeless and they're in the big city or they're walking the streets, you might feel unsafe. You have no place to stay. You have no sense of connection of family or security. A lot of people in prison might attach to this, that love and belonging, because they're trying to survive. So they attach to a certain group and identify themselves as, family, and they might do horrible things in terms of getting that love and belonging from some sort of crew or gang, just to have a connection with somebody, because they've never felt love from anybody else. So unfortunately, these people teach them what love is if they've never been taught what a true love means before, or a healthy love is. So a lot of people get stuck in that love and belonging. And then you have your self-esteem, that's your confidence, your achievement, respect of others, there's the mutual respect back and forth, the need to be a unique, creative individual. And then the tip of the pyramid is your self-actualization. That's your morals, your creativity, your acceptance, your experience, your purpose, your meaning, your inner potential. Some people still struggle with that as an adult, but think of these 5 levels as, being a child that doesn't have anything. So if a perpetrator identifies your vulnerability as a teenage girl that has low self-esteem, and maybe her father never told her she was beautiful, how easy would it be for her to be picked up by an older individual that is very good looking and charming, and she gets in the van, or she gets in the nice pretty car that she's never seen before, and he treats her to go get her nails done, she gets her hair done. Because her needs are not being met at home, someone else is going to meet them. And traffickers study this, they take this, and that's their form of manipulation. So whenever people say, well, how can she get herself in that situation? Or why would he do this? Or I would have just said no or run away. Well, when you tap into the vulnerabilities that people are not meeting for these kids or these adults, it's actually very easy to get them, if they're homeless or on the street, he tapped into their physiological needs. So here's how they groom. First, you'll see they target the victim, and they befriend them, they gain their trust. A lot of people say that, oh, it's the stranger, watch out, stranger danger, but really it's that trusting adult, that trusting family member, that trusting friend that manipulates them and gains their trust, gains the parents' trust, like they can never do any harm or wrong to their child, but actually, it's a form of manipulation and false promises. They feel a need. That need is, well, that dependency, that maybe she's homeless or she needs a place to sleep. So I'm going to give her that place. I'm going to give her a bed in that hotel for a couple nights in exchange for something. But he felt that need. She didn't have a home. Boom. They isolate them. They create dependence on them, and then they abuse them while meeting those needs. So she might be getting abused in that bed in that hotel, but yet she would be homeless without him. So she might be more than willing to just endure that abuse because it's better than being on the street. So they're abusing them while meeting that need at the same time, and that's how they maintain control. Some risk factors, they're divided up into 2 groups, that's societal and individual. Individual, that can be previous abuse, history of sexual abuse, sexual assault, they're running away from home, a loss of a caregiver, they don't come from a two-parent home, they're homeless, they're in foster care, they're running away from school, they're not attending school, foster system involvement, societal, racism, sexism, homophobia. A lot of times our LGBTQ plus community is, they have a lack of resources, they have a lack of support and understanding. And why are these kids that are from the LGBTQ plus community are more vulnerable to these types of situations is because unfortunately sometimes kids that do come from a two-parent home, they might get kicked out of their home because they don't feel accepted, or they feel like the black sheep, or they can't be themselves and their parents are not supportive. So they will run to someone that will be supportive, and it might be a trafficker or a bad person that ultimately exploits them and exploits their sexuality. Poverty is a big vulnerability because they have a lack of resources in the community, and criminalization of vulnerable community. So here are some barriers to identifying victims of trafficking. Victims don't often identify as victims because they think they're in control and they think they put themselves in that situation. So it's their fault, not the perpetrators. A lot of times they have trauma bond, they're tied to their partner, their boyfriend, when really they are that trafficker and they have ill intentions towards that person. They're fearful of their trafficker. Their trafficker might beat them. They might be holding a gun to their head as they're driving to the hospital. Fear of arrest, deportation of immigrants, they might be withholding their passports for labor trafficking. The distrust in systems. These kids, they hate the police, they hate CPS. They might have a background of being taken away from their parents at 2, 3 years old, and they've been living with their older brother and sister and kind of doing what they want. Their survival skills, they're street smart, and they just don't like the police. They have trouble trusting them because we may have failed them before. Language barriers to disclosure and services. They might not speak that part English very well, and they might feel threatened whenever a cop talks to them, or a medical provider is just asking them question after question after question, but maybe not asking the right ones. So recruiting, you kind of heard me touch on the kids about the online social media stuff. So I'm going to tell you where trafficking can happen. Obviously, we're seeing them in Roblox, Snapchat, Facebook, dating websites, juvenile detention centers. A lot of times, unfortunately, where we put these kids, or CPS, our placement options and youth shelters are slim to none here in Louisiana. And the ones that you do find, it's kind of like a trafficking hub, because you have kids that are placed in there, and there's really there's not a lot of guidance, and they can be very susceptible when they kind of run to and from the shelters, and you have recruiters just kind of parked outside, because those kids that are homeless and they're in a group home, there's your vulnerability right there. So those kids kind of have a disadvantage if they don't have a good advocate for them. Local parties, schools and bus stops, job sites, Craigslist. I don't know if y'all heard about Backpage. Used to be a huge deal of how traffickers would contact victims and get kids through social media, but Backlist was shut down a couple years ago, but Craigslist still does exist. So unfortunately, traffickers in the online world, it keeps going. It'll never be shut down. So if one app gets shut down, there's always going to be a next one. So how social media fuels trafficking. This is like a little flow chart of how it starts, and I'm just going to give you a quick scenario of how it plays out. So if you have a teenager or a child, especially a daughter or anybody that they want to show themselves off, and they're very naive of what people are doing in the background, is they might take a picture of themselves, a very pretty picture, a filtered picture. Maybe they're showing a little bit too much of their breast, or they're putting hashtags and they're failing to do their safety settings. They might have where their location is at the time that they took that picture, She might be hashtag, where's the party tonight? Or hashtag lonely, hashtag tell me I'm beautiful, or anything like that to get likes, because kids thrive off of how many likes and how many followers they have these days. And what that does that they don't know about is it identifies a need, it identifies a desire for what they want. So she just told you that where she was, her location, what attention she wants, and how lonely she is, and where the party's at. So if anybody would contact her, they know exactly what avenue she's going to take, because they have to offer her. All they have to do is tell her she's beautiful. I can offer you alcohol. I could offer you a party. I could offer you a way out and how to feel good in that moment. So it's easy to pinpoint, and it opens up a reason for discussion. A DM is a direct message, and kids are constantly on that. So when we go to schools, we're trying so hard to tell these kids the truth, and like these people that are DMing you and they're telling you everything that you want to hear, it's because you've created and you exploited your vulnerability out there, and now you're more susceptible for anybody trying to tell you, and say no. Don't go. But as you know, it takes, kids long to develop their brain, and they're not doing rational thinking or questions. And we've all made stupid decisions as a teenager. I know that I'm one of them. That's why I do trafficking and try to, help kids as much as I can, because I know I've made stupid decisions. But kids deal with a different problem these days than even when I was growing up. Social media is just a major fuel for trafficking, and I would have to say that's the biggest hub right now, other than the physical aspect. So some signs to watch for is, your kid may be hiding the screen when you come into the room. They're secretive about who they're talking to. They're leaving the room when they're calling or texting people. Your youth suddenly has lots of new stuff, maybe anything that's out of their norm. They're hanging out with a significant older boyfriend or girlfriend, a sudden change of friend groups, risky sexual online behavior, promiscuous pictures, a chronic runaway. Always say that's that push-pull factor. They're always, pulling from something and pushing towards something else. They think the grass is greener on the other side all the time, so they're running away from something. And loss of interest in age-appropriate activities. They're maybe isolating themselves, or just very withdrawn or depressed. Now, I would say that, just because your kid is checking off one or two does not mean that they're being trafficked by any means. So please keep that in mind. But as a parent, as a guardian, as a caretaker, your kid's normal and what's outside of their normal. And it's just really just talking to your kids and just being present, because like I say to parents, if you don't tell them about sex and love and healthy relationships, and they don't know about that, kids are going to set that tone. Social media, Hollywood, movies, they're going to teach them their version of love and what that is. So I do talk to a lot of parents, and they're just like, oh, I want to shelter them, not really keep them in a bubble, but I don't think they're ready yet, because I don't want to expose them to that. But, and I get both ways, but these days it's different. And like I said, social media, I feel like it's only getting worse, but so keep that in mind. So we talked about all the grim stuff. So what can we do about it? Let's try to uplift y'all a little bit. So the easiest thing that you can do is just change your unconscious bias. We all have it. I have it, even working in this field. Just to give you an example, you see a promiscuous girl, look at her, she's so promiscuous. Why is she dressed like that? What is she wanting from this? Well, let's flip the script. Let's see what's happened to her. She's acting a certain way because something may have happened. Where the behavior is stemming from. This poor boy, he has a multi-generational history of abuse. His family's poor. He comes from a one-parent home. His parents are a mess. He doesn't stand a chance. Look who's raising him. Well, what can I do to break the cycle? What resources are lacking? Why are they failing? And she's just running away again. We can't stop her. Well, let's see what she's running from. What is she experiencing at home that's so bad to make her want to run all the time? So we must want to look for a child that does not want to be found. And it's estimated it takes about 30 contacts to locate one child. You know that saying, it takes a village to raise a child. That is so true, especially with these kids. They don't want to be found, especially the kids that are soliciting themselves over social media and they think that nothing bad can happen to them. It takes a long time to be able to tell them what they're doing is wrong. Just because everyone else is doing it and they're making money and you're getting your needs met, it's not right, and you are so susceptible to being taken away or something really horrible that you can never come back from. Some kids get it. Some kids think they're in control, and if they're not being physically touched and they're not feeling it, they're not feeling harmed, they think that they're not being harmed. But whenever you lay down the facts of what's happening behind their picture that's circulating online, they can come to realize that they're actually, being taken advantage of. So if we just keep raising that awareness with kids and instilling that in their mind and make it a norm that it's not okay, then I think we're doing the best that we can. So another thing about, knowing the warning signs and some of the red flags, I kind of touched on them just maybe a second ago. I want to talk more about brandings. I mean, what's normal, what's not normal with your child, maybe isolation, depression, grades that are A's and B's and all of a sudden have dropped to like D's and F's in school, signs, sudden changes in friends, recited story, secret about who they're talking to, who they're hanging out with, risky, promiscuous sexual behavior, maybe a controlling relationship, boyfriend or girlfriend, signs as bruises, burn marks, and cuts. And a lot of people say like, oh, if they're being trafficked, they'll have a big tattoo that says Charles or King with a crown as a branding sign, which really you'll see that in bigger cities and gangs. But over here with our kids, some of the kids we do see do have branding tattoos, but traffickers are trying to be more discreet about their branding. So they're actually dyeing pieces of hair. Within 3 girls, we've had like just a colorful stripe of hair in certain places that we've seen were patterns of a consistency, or they have inflicted a big deep cut, a wound that wasn't cared for, and then the mother and the daughter had the same type of open wound cut that was pretty fresh and pretty, not taken care of within the day. So they'll leave certain, discreet brandings, and some of them don't have brandings at all. So like I said, if your child or the person that you're concerned about has, a couple checks, does not mean that they're trafficked, but it just kind of should make you raise, some awareness and watch out for it a little bit more. So this is about trauma-informed care. What is helpful if you are a provider and you're working with youth, such as a social worker, or especially or police or detectives that are working with a female victim or a male victim. Some things that could be helpful to build rapport is just take time to get to know them. Be clear about your role and your intentions and what will happen next. Provide some choices. They want that sense of control, restore autonomy with your victims. If they have been trafficked for, a year or even 6 months or 6 weeks, they have been controlled that whole time. So if you are recovering a victim, you want to give them a choice, not a big choice about, or maybe like where they want to sit, or do they want some water? A simple choice like that can build trust with the victim. Focus on strengths and resilience, just to kind of give them, some feedback. It's just not all negative. You want to restore some positive aspects of what they've been doing while they're on the run. Motor signs of distress, minimize the risk of re-traumatization. Only ask questions that you need to. While they're talking, listen, don't interrupt them. Recognize anxieties around immigration status and have translators to address language barriers for foreign victims. These are just small things that can help out a practitioner that is dealing with a trafficking victim. So what's not helpful is just all the opposite, is interrupting them, controlling them, not giving them choices, blaming them, using words like a child prostitute, you're promiscuous, you're fast, you're easy. Don't touch them without asking their permission. Don't ask for details of abuse unless it is within your role, like a detective. And just don't expect them to trust you right away. And don't expect them to self-identify as a victim of human trafficking, even if you know clear cut that they are. So how to report a victim of this abuse: follow your protocol at work policy. If you are a mandated reporter, you should know where to make a report. Child Protective Services. There's the 855 number. They are available 24/7. Report to your local law enforcement if anything, or you call the National Human Trafficking Hotline. That is available all the time, and they can contact your local law enforcement for you. Just do something. If you do know about it, just say something. That's all you can do. That's the least you can do, because you never know when you can save a child from a harmful situation. Our internal collaborative response of what we're doing here at the CAC is we are the child trafficking coordinators. I am a facilitator in Love 146. Last year, me and my coworker, we have gotten this curriculum approved within the Rapids Parish school system. Love 146 teaches kids about online exploitation and how to stay safe through healthy relationships in schools and the social media world. We teach them what is sex trafficking. We teach them what survival trafficking is, labor trafficking. This is not a sex ed course by any means. This is just telling them relevant, updated information of what they can use and how they can educate themselves and be more preventative and stay safe online, and about safety planning in real life teenage situations. Right now, we're currently building a human trafficking task force within our community, and our MDT members are multidisciplinary teams such as the courthouse, FINS, OJJ, FBI, state police, on a systemic approach. Our human trafficking forensic interview trainings, all of our forensic interviewers, such as myself at the CAC, we do conduct interviews that are protocol towards human trafficking. So there is a different way that we're asking questions to help out law enforcement in the investigation. And we're obviously doing community outreach and education as much as possible. Trying to get the word out is the main aspect of it, and just trying to get into as many schools and teaching these kids as much as we can. So I know I talked your head off and I may have went fast, but thank you for letting me have the time to talk to you guys today. And I didn't give you room to interrupt me for questions, but if you do have any questions, I'm going to stop talking and shout it out to me, and I'll try to answer as best as I can.
Thanks,
But thank you,
Megan.
guys.
Do you mind stop sharing?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Let me see if I can share my screen. Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Megan? I actually have a question. What grades are you teaching, or what grades are you doing this training with, and what schools?
146 is designed for 12-year-olds to above, like 17. I mean, we're teaching youth, so I have to stay in the room of the minors, so ages 12 on up.
Okay.
And the schools that we have done so far is Pineville Junior High, Bolton, AMMS. We're going to Peabody. We're going to Pineville High School, so, and then Ash. So they were at the end of the year in May, got kind of, dormant because of all the leak testing and stuff, but trying to set up things through with the school counselors in the fall. And this summer, actually next month, we are hosting our training for our families that come through the CAC with siblings if they were seen here. So that's really obviously not an announcement because of the confidentiality, but we are going to be doing that during the summer for our kids that we see here through the CAC. But in the fall, we will resume to the schools.
Awesome. Let's see. Sharon wants to know if you can share your slides with us.
So I will have to get with my director for that since it is under the agency, but I can try to get you maybe a summary of it. I'll look out for that. I'll answer you back, Sharon.
Sure. Okay, so stay tuned on that. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. Well, thanks again, Megan. Your presentation was awesome, and thank you to everyone who tuned in for this session of #HelpInSinLaw Live. This session will be available shortly on our #HelpInSinLaw YouTube channel, and you can access that channel by visiting youtube.com and searching #HelpInSinLaw. Just make sure you include that hashtag. And then, of course, you can subscribe to our channel to be alerted when new videos come out. And also, if you are interested in submitting a video that highlights your organization's services, please let us know. We'd be glad to share it. If you have an upcoming event and you'd like to get the word out about that, we can definitely help you do that as well. You can email helpinsinlaw@gmail.com for guidelines and suggestions on how to create a video. We're going to take a break over the summer, so we won't have any sessions over the summer, and we're going to regroup in the fall. So stay tuned for information about any future sessions that are coming up in our series. So thanks again, everyone. And Megan, thank you. That was a great presentation.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone. Great session.